Keep dreaming about success. Loser. My family mocked me with a blank birthday card and fake smiles. Then I dropped the 4.8 million inheritance bomb and exposed all their crimes when they came begging. What followed destroyed every one of them. I 29th male, and this story is about how my piece of garbage family tried to keep me down until I became the one holding all the cards. Fair warning, this gets intense, but stick with it because the ending is absolutely worth it. I'm a former Marine, did 2 tours overseas before getting out in 2018. Came back with some PTSD and a few scars, but also with discipline and a work ethic that most civilians can't even comprehend. While I was overseas getting shot at, my family was back home living their comfortable lives and apparently deciding I was the family disappointment. My older sister Jessica is 32 and the golden child. She's one of those women who thinks her stuff doesn't stink because she married some finance guy named Chad. She's never worked a real job in her life. Went straight from daddy's money to husband's money. Total gold digger. But the family treats her like she's some kind of success story. My younger brother Kyle is 26 and basically a professional man-child. Lives in mom's basement. Claims he's an entrepreneur, but really just sells random junk online and plays video games all day. The guy's never held a real job for more than 3 months. But somehow I'm the screw-up. Mom, Linda, is 54 and has always favored Jessica because she made good choices. Translation, she married money. Dad, Mike, is 57, one of those guys who peaked in high school and works the same factory job he's had for 20 years. He's bitter about his own failures, so he takes it out on everyone around him, especially me. When I got out of the military, I used my GI benefits to get a business degree while working nights at a warehouse. The warehouse job was brutal. Loading trucks for 12 hours, then classes during the day. I was running on maybe 4 hours of sleep for 2 years straight, but I taught myself real estate investing, financial planning, market analysis, basically anything that could help me build wealth. The real breakthrough came when I started studying distressed commercial properties. These are buildings that are failing or poorly managed. Most investors avoid them because they're complicated and risky. But my military training taught me to see opportunity where others see problems. I'd buy these properties cheap, fix the operational issues, and either flip them or turn them into cash-flowing assets. By 2022, I was making 6 figures as a senior investment analyst specializing in distressed commercial properties. My military background gave me the discipline to handle the stress and attention to detail that most investors lack. But did my family give a darn? Heck no. Every family gathering was the same routine. Jessica bragging about her latest vacation, paid for by hubby, of course. Kyle talking about his next big business idea, and everyone treating me like I was still that broke kid who enlisted because he had no other options. They saw my work clothes when I'd show up to family events. Saw the wear and tear on my hands from actually working. To them, that meant I was still a loser. They couldn't see past the surface to understand that I was building something real. The birthday dinner where everything changed happened in March. I'd just closed a deal on a shopping plaza that netted me $340,000 in profit. Basically more money than my dad had made in the last 5 years combined. I was finally ready to show them I'd made something of myself. Boy, was I wrong about how that would go down. I showed up actually feeling good about myself for once. New deal closed, new apartment, finally had my life together. I even brought expensive steaks for dinner. Jessica's sprawled on the couch, scrolling through Instagram. Kyle's playing some mobile game with the volume turned up like a child. Oh look, the war hero's here, Jessica says without looking up. The way she said war hero, like it was a joke. Dinner was mom's usual overcooked roast and instant mashed potatoes. The whole time, Jessica's going on about how Chad's getting promoted, and they're looking at houses. We saw this amazing place yesterday. 4 bedrooms, 3 baths. Gorgeous kitchen. It's only $850,000, but Chad says we can afford it. Only $850,000. Like that's pocket change. For a house she's not even paying for. I tried joining the conversation and mentioned my recent deal. Actually, I just closed on something pretty big at work. Bought this old shopping center, renovated it, and sold it for a nice profit. Kyle looks up for exactly 2 seconds. Cool story. How much profit? Like a few thousand? More than you think, I said quietly. Doubt it, Jessica laughed. I mean, what do real estate people even make? Like $40,000? Chad makes twice that without even trying. Some people just have natural business sense, you know. $40,000. I was making more than 4 times that, but there was no point arguing. Dad finally chimes in. Real estate's a bubble anyway. Gonna crash just like 2008. Hope you're not counting on that lasting. Thanks for the vote of confidence, Dad. Then came the birthday surprise. Mom disappears and comes back with a card. Just one card from all of them. Here, she says, don't say we never get you anything. I open it up. Generic birthday card from the grocery store. Probably cost 99 cents. The inside is completely blank except for happy birthday, I guess. The family, in Kyle's handwriting. No signatures, no personal message, no we love you or we're proud of you. Just I guess. That's when something inside me shifted. Not anger. Anger would have been too hot, too obvious. This was colder, harder. The kind of feeling you get when you realize you're surrounded by people who think you're too stupid to know they don't respect you. But I just smiled and said, thanks. This is perfect. Because I had a secret they didn't know about yet. And I was about to make their whole year. Actually, I said, still smiling at that pathetic excuse for a birthday card, since we're all here, I've got some news to share. Everyone looked at me with that same bored expression they always had when I tried to talk. Like whatever I was about to say couldn't possibly be important. I just found out that Grandpa Joe left me something in his will. Now I had their attention. Grandpa Joe, my dad's father, had died 6 months earlier. The old man had been a Korean War vet, built a successful construction company from nothing, and was basically the only person in the family who ever treated me with respect. He understood what military service meant. He got what it was like to work your rear end off for everything you had. While everyone else in the family saw Grandpa Joe as this gruff old man who complained too much, I saw him as someone who had built something real. He'd started with nothing after the war, learned construction by working for other people, and eventually built his own company that employed over 50 people. He was tough, but he was fair. He respected hard work and dedication. What kind of something? Jessica asked, suddenly interested. I could practically see the dollar signs lighting up in her eyes. Well, I said, reaching into my jacket. Apparently he set up a trust fund, and it matured last month on my 29th birthday. I pulled out the letter from my attorney. Official letterhead, legal language, the works. I'd been carrying it around for 3 days, waiting for the right moment. According to this, Grandpa Joe left me his entire construction business, 3 rental properties, and about $2.3 million in various investments. You could have heard a pin drop. Jessica's phone slipped out of her hand and clattered on the floor. Kyle's mouth was hanging open like he was trying to catch flies. Dad actually looked up from the TV for the first time all night. Mom's face went through about 5 different expressions in 2 seconds. Confusion, disbelief, calculation, and finally that fake happiness she puts on when she wants something. That's not possible, Mom stammered. He would have told us. We would have known. Apparently he didn't want to tell anyone until after he was gone, I said, scanning the letter like I was reading it for the first time. Says here he was worried about certain family members trying to influence his decisions if they knew. I looked straight at Jessica when I said that part. Her face was turning red. There has to be a mistake, she said, standing up so fast she knocked over her water glass. Grandpa wouldn't do that. He loved all of us equally. Did he, though? I asked. Because I remember visiting him every month in the nursing home. I remember helping him with his VA paperwork when his arthritis got bad. I remember being the only one who showed up to his birthday last year. That shut her up real quick. The truth was, I'd been the only family member who bothered to maintain a relationship with Grandpa Joe after he moved to assisted living. Everyone else was too busy with their own lives to spend time with an old man who just wanted to talk about the war and tell stories about building his business. Where were you when he was dying, Jess? Oh, right. You were in Hawaii with Chad, posting bikini pics on Instagram while he was in hospice care. That's not fair, she said, but her voice was getting shrill. We had already planned that trip. It cost us thousands of dollars. Yeah, priorities. Dad finally spoke up. Let me see that letter. I handed it over and watched his face change as he read it. My attorney had done their job. Everything looked completely legitimate because it was legitimate. I'd inherited Grandpa Joe's entire estate, worth roughly $4.8 million after taxes. The construction business alone was worth over $2 million. It had contracts stretching out 18 months, a solid reputation in the community, and equipment that was paid off. The rental properties were in good neighborhoods and fully occupied. The investment accounts had been growing steadily for 20 years. This can't be right, Dad said, but I could hear the doubt creeping into his voice. He always said the business would stay in the family. It is staying in the family, I said. I'm family. Last time I checked. Kyle, who hadn't said a word this whole time, suddenly perked up. So, you're rich now? That's awesome, dude. We should celebrate. You could totally help me out with my business idea. The little weasel was already trying to figure out how to get his hands on some of that money. I could see the wheels turning in his head. Finally, someone in the family had real money, and he could mooch off them instead of having to actually work. Yeah, I said, standing up and straightening my jacket. I'm pretty set now. Thanks for the dinner, Mom. And the card. Really means a lot. I started walking toward the door, but Jessica's voice stopped me. Wait, Ryan, this is amazing news. We should talk about this. As a family. There it was. 5 minutes ago, I was the family disappointment. Now that I had money, suddenly I was worth talking to. Suddenly I was family again. Talk about what? I asked, not turning around. Well, Grandpa Joe always talked about wanting to help everyone. And Chad and I were looking at that house. And Kyle's trying to start his business. And Mom and Dad have been talking about finally doing those home improvements. I turned around slowly. All three of them were looking at me with these fake smiles, like vultures circling a fresh carcass. Even Dad had muted the TV and was paying attention now. Oh, I see. You want to talk about my money. It's not like that, Mom said quickly. It's just family helps family, right? That's what we do. We support each other. Family helps family, I repeated. That's interesting. Where was that philosophy when I was eating ramen noodles for 2 months straight so I could afford textbooks? Where was family helps family when I was working 70-hour weeks to pay for college? The room went quiet again. This is different, Jessica said. You don't need all that money. What's one person going to do with $4.8 million? Think about how much good it could do for all of us. And there it was. The entitlement I'd been waiting for. The assumption that my inheritance was somehow theirs to claim. I smiled. You're about to find out. Over the next few weeks, I watched my family transform from indifferent relatives into the most attentive people you've ever seen. It was honestly pretty hilarious if you could appreciate the irony. Jessica started texting me daily. Hey bro, just thinking about you. How's the new business going? We should grab coffee soon. This from the woman who hadn't texted me in 8 months except to ask if I was coming to Christmas. The messages were so transparent it was almost insulting. Saw this article about real estate and thought of you, followed by a link to some random Forbes article. Hope you're taking care of yourself. You work so hard. As if she'd ever cared about my work ethic before. Kyle suddenly wanted to hang out all the time. Dude, we should hit up that new restaurant downtown. My treat. Of course, when we got there, he'd mysteriously forgotten his wallet, and I'd end up paying for everything. He'd spend the whole meal pitching me on whatever scheme he'd cooked up that week. Mom started inviting me over for dinner twice a week. I'm making your favorite, she'd say, as if she'd ever paid attention to what my favorite anything was. She'd suddenly developed an interest in my work, asking detailed questions about my properties and investments, questions she'd never bothered to ask before. But Jessica was the worst. The transformation was incredible to watch. She went from calling me a broke loser to treating me like her new best friend overnight. She started showing up at my apartment unannounced with coffee and pastries, wanting to catch up. I feel like we haven't been close lately, she said during one of these visits, sitting on my couch like she owned the place. I want to change that. Really? What brought this on? I don't know. I guess Grandpa Joe's death made me realize how important family is, she said, not even trying to sound convincing. Life's too short to hold grudges. What grudges? I wasn't holding any grudges. I was just tired of being treated like garbage. Speaking of Grandpa Joe, she continued, I've been thinking about what you said, about the money. Here we go. I know this might sound presumptuous, but Chad and I were thinking, maybe you could help us with the down payment on that house? It would be like an investment for you. We'd pay you back with interest. I almost laughed. How much are we talking about? Well, we need about $170,000 for the down payment. But like I said, we'd pay you back. Chad's getting that promotion, so money won't be tight much longer. $170,000. She wanted me to hand over $170,000 like it was nothing. To buy a house for her and her husband. A house I'd never be welcome in once they got what they wanted. I'll think about it, I said. Her eyes lit up. Really? Oh my gosh, Ryan, you're the best. This would change our whole lives. I'm sure it would. She started coming over more frequently after that, each time with a new sob story about why they needed the money right now. The seller was getting impatient. Interest rates were going up. Someone else was looking at the house. They'd already put down earnest money. The usual high-pressure sales tactics that any decent salesperson would see right through. Kyle wasn't much better. He'd invented some nonsense about starting a digital marketing agency and needed $50,000 to get off the ground. When I asked for a business plan, he looked at me like I'd asked him to solve quantum physics. Business plan? Dude, It's digital marketing. You just make websites and stuff. How hard can it be? I've been watching YouTube videos about it. He had no clients, no business model, no actual skills, and no plan beyond make websites for money. But somehow he thought $50,000 would magically transform him into a successful entrepreneur. Even mom got in on the action. She needed $30,000 for home improvements. Apparently, the roof was leaking, the furnace was dying, and the kitchen needed to be remodeled. Funny how all these emergencies suddenly appeared after I came into money. But I played along. I acted interested in their schemes. I asked questions. I made them think I was seriously considering it. Because while they were busy planning how to spend my money, I was planning something else entirely. I hired a forensic accountant to look into Jessica and Chad's finances. Turns out Chad wasn't getting promoted. He was about to be fired for embezzling client funds. The authorities were already investigating him for stealing money from his company's escrow accounts. Kyle's entrepreneurial ventures were mostly just credit card fraud and selling counterfeit goods online. I had records of everything: fake designer handbags, knockoff electronics, even counterfeit medications. The guy was basically running a one-man crime syndicate out of mom's basement. And mom and dad? They weren't broke. They had $180,000 sitting in a savings account that dad thought I didn't know about. Money they'd been hiding for years while crying poverty every time I needed help. My family wasn't just greedy. They were criminals and liars. And they thought I was too stupid to figure it out. Time to show them how wrong they were. I let them stew for about 6 weeks, letting their desperation build. Jessica was texting me multiple times a day now, each message more frantic than the last. The house sellers were supposedly ready to walk. Chad was stressed beyond belief. Their whole future was hanging in the balance. Ryan, I hate to pressure you, but we really need an answer about the loan, she texted one afternoon. The sellers gave us until Friday, or they're moving on to the next buyer. Kyle had started showing up at my office, which was both embarrassing and impressive, considering he'd never held a real job long enough to understand how professional environments work. Security had to escort him out twice after he tried to follow me into client meetings. Dude, you're being really weird about this, he said during one of these ambush visits. It's just money? You've got tons of it now. Why can't you help your brother out? Mom was pulling the full guilt trip routine. Your grandfather would want you to help family, she'd say during our weekly dinners. He always believed in taking care of each other. That's what family money is for. That was rich, considering she'd told me to figure it out yourself when I needed help with college tuition. During this time, I was busy putting together something special. See, while they thought I was just sitting on Grandpa Joe's money, I was actually using it strategically. I'd acquired 2 more commercial properties, started a property management company, and was in negotiations to buy a small construction firm. The construction company was particularly interesting. It was owned by a guy who was getting ready to retire, and he was looking for someone with both the capital and the knowledge to take over. My military background and real estate experience made me the perfect candidate. The existing contracts alone would generate over $3 million in revenue over the next 18 months. But the best part was what I'd discovered about Chad's company. Remember how I said he was embezzling money? Well, it turns out that his firm had been the contractor on several of my real estate projects, and some of the money he'd stolen had come from jobs I'd paid for. In other words, Chad had literally stolen from me, multiple times. The forensic accountant had traced at least $45,000 in fraudulent charges back to projects where I was the client. That gave me some very interesting legal options. Finally, I decided it was time. I called Jessica and told her I was ready to discuss the loan. Oh my gosh, really? Ryan, you're saving our lives. When can we meet? How about Sunday dinner at Mom's? We can all sit down and discuss the details. Perfect. I'll bring the paperwork. Chad's going to be so relieved. Sunday couldn't come fast enough. I showed up at Mom's house that evening carrying a briefcase. The whole family was there, plus Chad, who I'd never seen look so nervous. They'd clearly been discussing strategy before I arrived. I could tell by the way they all looked up when I walked in, like they'd been caught planning something. Ryan, Mom said, giving me a hug that felt about as genuine as a used car salesman's smile. We're so excited to hear what you've decided. I sat down at the kitchen table and opened my briefcase. Everyone leaned in, eyes glued to the papers inside. They were practically salivating at the thought of getting their hands on my money. So, I said, pulling out a stack of documents, I've given this a lot of thought, and I've made some decisions about how I want to use Grandpa Joe's money. That's wonderful, Jessica said, practically bouncing in her seat. Chad and I have been looking at loan terms and interest rates, and we think we can structure this in a way that works for everyone. I'm not giving you any money for the house, I said calmly. The room went dead silent. What? Jessica's voice cracked. I said I'm not giving you money for the house. Or you, Kyle, for your fake business. Or you, Mom, for your imaginary home repairs. Dad leaned forward. Now wait just a minute. No, you wait, I said, my voice still calm but with an edge that made him sit back. See, while you've all been plotting how to spend my inheritance, I've been doing some research. I pulled out the first set of documents. Jessica, did you know your husband is about to be arrested for embezzling $340,000 from his clients? The authorities have been watching him for 3 months. Chad went white as a sheet. Jessica grabbed his arm. That's not true. Tell him that's not true. Chad couldn't even look at her. He just stared at the table like he was trying to disappear into it. Kyle, I continued, pulling out more papers. Interesting business model you've got there. Selling counterfeit designer goods and using stolen credit card numbers to buy inventory. I've got receipts going back 2 years. Kyle started sweating. Dude, I don't know what you're talking about. The postal inspectors are building a case. You're looking at federal mail fraud charges, wire fraud, and trafficking in counterfeit goods. That's about 15 years if they decide to prosecute everything. I turned to my parents. And Mom, Dad, nice savings account you've got hidden away. $180,000 is a lot of money for people who claim they can't afford to help their son through college. Mom's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Dad just stared at me with this look of pure shock. So here's what's going to happen, I said, stacking the papers neatly. You're all going to leave me alone. You're going to stop pretending you give a darn about me. And you're going to accept that I don't owe you anything. You can't do this, Jessica screamed, finally losing her composure completely. We're family. You have to help us. I don't have to do anything, I said, standing up. But I am going to do something. Something Grandpa Joe would appreciate. I pulled out one final document. I'm donating half the inheritance to the Veterans Administration Hospital, where Grandpa Joe spent his last months. They're going to use it to build a new wing for PTSD treatment. The screaming that followed was spectacular. Jessica completely lost her mind, calling me every name in the book. Kyle tried to grab the papers from my hands like that would somehow change anything. Mom started crying about how disappointed Grandpa Joe would be. But the best part was watching Chad quietly slip out the back door while his wife was having her meltdown. He knew the walls were closing in. And the other half, I continued, raising my voice over the chaos, I'm using to expand my business. I just bought Mitchell Construction. You know, the company that's been bidding against Chad's firm for the last 2 years. Turns out they were very interested in acquiring someone with both capital and inside information about their competition. That got Chad's attention real quick. He stopped halfway to the door. See, Chad, when you embezzle money from construction projects, and some of those projects happen to be mine, that makes you not just a thief, but specifically someone who stole from me. My attorney thinks we have an excellent case for both criminal charges and civil recovery. Jessica turned to look at her husband with pure horror in her eyes. Chad? What is he talking about? Chad didn't answer. He just ran. Literally ran out the back door like a coward. I picked up my briefcase and headed for the door. Thanks for dinner, Mom. It's been enlightening. As I reached the door, Jessica's voice followed me out. You'll regret this. You'll come crawling back when you need something. I turned around one last time. No, Jessica. You will. I didn't have to wait long to be proven right. Within a week, Chad was arrested at his office. The embezzlement charges were just the beginning. Turns out he'd been running a whole network of financial fraud schemes. He'd stolen from multiple clients, falsified insurance claims, and even set up fake vendor accounts to funnel money to himself. Jessica called me crying, begging me to bail him out. Ryan, please. They want $50,000 for bail. I don't have that kind of money. Have you tried asking Mom and Dad? I hear they've got some savings tucked away. They won't help. They say it's not their problem. But he's my husband. I can't just let him sit in jail. Funny how that works. When it was my problems, family wasn't supposed to help. But now that it was her crisis, suddenly family should drop everything and open their wallets. Kyle got raided by postal inspectors 3 days later. Apparently, my tip to law enforcement about his counterfeit goods operation was taken very seriously. They seized his computers, his inventory, everything. Turns out he'd been operating under multiple fake business names and had scammed hundreds of customers. He was looking at 5 to 10 years in federal prison, possibly more if they decided to pursue all the charges. He actually had the nerve to show up at my apartment, banging on the door at 2 a.m. Dude, you messed me over. I'm going to prison because of you. I opened the door just enough to see his face. He looked terrible. Unshaven, wild-eyed, probably hadn't slept in days. No, Kyle, you're going to prison because you're a criminal. I just made sure you got caught. Please, man, I'll do anything. I'll pay you back double whatever you want. Just help me get a good attorney. Should have thought about that before you decided to be a piece of garbage. I closed the door and called the police about the noise disturbance. He spent the night in county lockup, which was probably good practice for where he was headed. But the really satisfying part was watching my business empire grow while their lives fell apart. Mitchell Construction was thriving under my ownership. I'd kept most of the original crew and management, but brought in my own financial oversight and project management systems. Within 3 months, we'd secured $2.8 million in new contracts, including several government jobs that required the kind of security clearance background that Chad's company could never get now. The irony was beautiful. I was literally building the life my family had tried to keep me from having, using the skills they'd mocked and the discipline they'd dismissed. My property management company was expanding too. I'd acquired 6 more commercial properties and was renovating them with my own construction crews. The profit margins were incredible when you controlled both sides of the business. Jessica's situation got worse by the week. Chad's legal troubles didn't just affect him. His company was hemorrhaging clients, and their personal assets were being frozen as part of the criminal investigation. She went from living in luxury to sleeping on friends' couches in a matter of months. And the best part? She couldn't get a job to save her life. Turns out when you've never worked a day in your life, you don't have any marketable skills. Who would have thought? Kyle got sentenced to 6 years in federal prison. The judge was particularly harsh because of the scope of his fraud operation and his complete lack of remorse. During the sentencing hearing, he actually tried to blame me for not helping him when he asked. His public defender advised him to stop talking. Mom and Dad lost their house when their tax fraud came to light. Apparently claiming fake dependents and hiding income isn't something the IRS takes lightly. They had to pay back taxes, penalties, and interest going back 7 years. That secret savings account got wiped out overnight. They ended up moving into a tiny apartment across town. Dad lost his factory job when his employer found out about the tax issues, something about integrity requirements for their government contracts. The phone calls from Mom became increasingly desperate. Ryan, honey, we made mistakes. We know that now. But we're family. Surely you can find it in your heart to help us get back on our feet. Did you help me get on my feet when I was struggling? That was different. You were young. You needed to learn responsibility. I learned it. Did you? Click. A year after that Sunday dinner, my life had completely transformed beyond anything I'd ever imagined possible. Mitchell Construction had expanded into 3 states and was pulling in over $15 million annually. My property portfolio was worth $8.2 million and growing every month. I'd moved into a downtown penthouse that cost more than my parents' old house. More importantly, I was genuinely happy for the first time in my adult life. I'd met an amazing woman, an architect who worked on several of my renovation projects. She appreciated that I'd built everything from scratch, that every success was earned through hard work and smart decisions rather than luck or family connections. That's when the desperate phone calls started coming more frequently. First, it was Mom, whose voice had taken on this whining quality I'd never heard before. Ryan, sweetheart, I know we've had our differences, but Kyle's trial is coming up and we need a good attorney. Could you maybe help us out? Just this once? No, but he's your brother. Family is supposed to stick together. My brother should have thought about that before he became a felon. Click. Then it was Jessica, who'd apparently been evicted from her friend's couch and was living in her car. Chad was in prison serving a 12-year sentence. She was facing bankruptcy and couldn't even afford a studio apartment. I have nowhere to go, Ryan. I'm literally sleeping in a parking lot. I just need a little help to get back on my feet. Get a job. I don't have any experience. I've never worked before. No one will hire me. Sounds like you have some learning to do. Click. But they didn't give up. Didn't. Oh no, that would have been too easy. They started showing up places. My office building, my gym, my favorite restaurants. Always with the same sob story about how desperate they were, how they just needed a little help, how families should stick together. I had to get a restraining order against Kyle when he got out on bail and tried to break into my building. The judge was not sympathetic when his public defender tried to argue that family disputes should be handled privately. The breaking point came 14 months after that dinner. I was having a business meeting at an upscale steakhouse with the mayor and several city council members about a major downtown development project when Jessica showed up. She looked absolutely terrible. Hair unwashed and matted, clothes that were obviously from a thrift store, completely desperate. She'd been living on the streets for weeks, probably months. "There he is," she announced to the entire restaurant. "My rich brother who won't help his own family?" The mayor looked mortified. Other diners were staring. I was beyond embarrassed. I was furious. "Jessica, you need to leave. Now." "Or what? You'll call security? You'll have your own sister arrested?" She was practically screaming now, tears streaming down her face. "Do you know what it's like to have nothing? To watch your whole life fall apart while your family ignores you?" I stood up slowly, walked over to her, and spoke in a voice low enough that only she could hear. "Yes, actually, I do. I know exactly what that's like, because I lived it for years while you ignored me. The difference is, I didn't make someone else responsible for fixing my problems." "Please," she whispered, and for the first time I heard genuine desperation in her voice. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything. I'll do anything. I'll get on my knees right here if you want. Just, please help me." I looked at her, really looked at her. Hair that used to be perfectly styled, now stringy and greasy. Designer clothes replaced with whatever she could find at charity shops. Hands that had never done manual labor, now rough and dirty from whatever odd jobs she'd managed to find. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "You know what, Jess? You're right. Family should help family. So I'm going to help you." Her eyes lit up with hope. "I'm going to teach you the most valuable lesson anyone ever taught me. Sometimes the only way to learn your worth is to earn it yourself. No handouts, no shortcuts, no rich husband or generous brother to bail you out. Just you, figuring out how to survive on your own." The hope died in her eyes. "Consider this my gift to you," I said, pulling out my wallet and dropping a 20 on the table. "That should cover bus fare to wherever you're staying tonight. Don't call me again." I walked back to my table, apologized to the mayor and council members, and finished my meeting. We ended up approving a $23 million development project that would create 300 jobs and revitalize an entire downtown district. I never saw Jessica at that restaurant again. 6 months later, Kyle was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison after violating his bail conditions by trying to run another scam while awaiting trial. Chad got 12 years for the full scope of his financial crimes. Mom and Dad declared bankruptcy and moved into government-assisted housing. They all learned the same lesson eventually. The world doesn't owe you anything just because you exist. Respect is earned, not inherited. And family means nothing if you're only related by blood and not by loyalty.